in the seat. I got you.
They have to go to YouTube and search for Huston-Tillotson.
Go to YouTube and just search Huston-Tillotson first.
This is me. Where should I be taking it?
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Hello.
Ma'am. Okay.
But I got mine at here and I really trust them. They're saying that you can mix them, but I don't know. Yeah. Did you hear me say I didn't even have to ask my doctor. I knew I wasn't ready. Yeah, you knew what going in. I don't know. I think for the people who are Johnson, it's different. And that's the whole culture. Well, but they're saying that they can Johnson more fights for that.
It wasn't even there when we were in my area. And places outside.
So I was able to went to YouTube and got the link and did add to the homepage on the website and put it on social media.
Got it. So we should be up and running.
Yeah, I saw like 4 or 5 people already tuned in. Ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give a few more minutes for some of our guests to arrive, so we'll start just in a few minutes. Good afternoon again, everyone. We're going to start today's memorial and celebration off with the Huston-Tillotson University Concert Choir. Burnett, I have the honor of serving as President and Chief Executive Officer of the home of the Genius Generation, Huston-Tillotson University. And I always like to say, Austin's oldest institution of higher learning. The university is deeply humbled to host the occasion of celebrating the life of one of our most esteemed and beloved alumni, Ada Cecilia Collins Anderson, and as she's known on campus, Dr. Mrs. Ada Cecilia Collins Anderson. I had the fortunate occasion of traveling with Mrs. Anderson twice. Once in Atlanta, Georgia, when she received the Historically Black College and University National Black Alumni Association Alumni of the Year Award. And then to College Park, Maryland, at the unveiling of her daughter, Sandra Joy's art collection at the University of Maryland, College Park. I also had the opportunity of visiting with Mrs. Anderson, Dr. Mrs. Anderson, in her home on many occasions. Each time I left in awe and overwhelmed with the gift that God gave me of spending time in the shadows of a giant, a legacy, an icon, a warrior for social justice, a diva, and a queen. I shared with Mrs. Anderson that I was patterning my presidency after two presidents here at Huston-Tillotson, John Q. Taylor King and Mary Elizabeth Branch. President Branch was the first female president and the president under which Mrs. Anderson graduated. Mrs. Anderson then gifted me with something invaluable that I have cherished and keep ever present in my office. Mrs. Anderson unselfishly gave me her diploma, signed by Mary Branch, conferring her degree of Bachelor of Science in Home Economics on May 26, in 1941 in Austin, Texas, from Tillotson College. And I have a show and tell that I have. I can't express the encouragement that she gave me in that moment to do what we call on this campus a superpower at Huston-Tillotson, and that is persistence. She was a beautiful human who altruistically and selflessly gave of herself to her family, her community, her friends, her state, her nation, and beyond. So today, we celebrate her life and the legacy that she leaves. We will move through the program as printed, beginning with Reverend Freeman, the pastor of Ebenezer Third Baptist Church. And I'm grateful for each of you for being here.
Good afternoon, Dr. Burnett and distinguished guests, members of the Anderson family, especially Johnny Van Dyke, member of our church. Mrs. Anderson was a member of Ebenezer Third Baptist Church for a long time, and we're happy to be a part of this celebration. The program calls for words of celebration, and for those of you who don't know what that means, it's not a sermon, it's not a eulogy, but it is brief, so that's the main thing. I want to shape my message to you from this passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 10 through 14, the New International Version. And the text says, "By the grace God has given me, I laid the foundation as a wise builder, and someone else is building on it. But each one should build with care, for no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. If anyone builds on this foundation using gold, silver, costly stones, wood, hay, or straw, their work will be shown for what it is, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will test the quality of each person's work. If what has been built survives, the builder will receive a reward." The word of our God. In this text, Paul describes the church as a building, God's building. Christ is the foundation of God's building. Paul and Apollos are master builders or contractors who serve on God's building team. The passage highlights the importance of building with care and integrity. Each builder has to choose materials carefully and think seriously about the structure that is being built upon the foundation. The structure can be built with expensive materials or inexpensive materials. Each builder is free to choose materials. The structure, however, will be tested. If the structure passes God's test, the builder will receive the appropriate reward. In life, we are presented with a platform or a foundation. It might be a huge, strong, and significant platform. It might be a small, frail, insignificant platform. What we do with the platform or foundation life presents makes all the difference in the world. When I think about the life, service, and impact of Mrs. Ada Collins Anderson, I am reminded of the message of the text. Ada Anderson was a wise and skillful builder who took the foundation life presented and built well. Ada Anderson was given a strong foundation. She was born into a family of hardworking, industrious, and religious persons who owned property, provided resources for education and the church. She learned early on the importance of family, education, faith, and financial independence. Ada did not have to go far to find examples of achievement. They were right there in her own home. Ada was presented with a strong foundation, and her experience was not typical for African American families in the segregated South. She was blessed. Her family was blessed. Sometimes we are given a strong foundation and we never rise above it. Some never go beyond what their parents bequeath to them. Some are given a mediocre foundation and yet carve out an exceptional path toward success. So what we do with the foundation life presents makes all the difference in the world. Ada Anderson built a life of hard work and distinguished service. She graduated college, earned master's degrees, and worked tirelessly from the ground up to carve out a career path dedicated to social uplift and inclusion. Along with her husband of 61 years, Mrs. Anderson built a real estate and insurance business that served African Americans and others in East Austin. Being married, rearing children, working a full-time job, and managing a business require a lot of time, focus, perseverance, and determination. You're always tired. There's always more to do. And when we think about what Ada Anderson accomplished with all the things on her plate, it is remarkable. And that she accomplished these things in the segregated South is especially compelling. Ada Anderson's tenacity and work ethic did not shield her from the impact of racism and injustice. She was denied a degree and placement at the Texas State Library because of segregation. Undaunted, she poured her efforts into activities to fight racism and social inequities. She organized voter registration drives, she became active in politics, and eventually was the first African American elected to county-wide office in Travis County. Ada organized social and community groups to expose African American families and children to the arts and other events which promoted education, achievement, and economic stability. Her vision was to build informed, well-rounded persons who could compete on any level and in any arena. Ada's vision and drive remind me of the words of Marianne Williamson in her poem, Our Deepest Fear. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us we ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel unsure around you. You were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. As we let our own light shine, we consciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Today, we celebrate a wise master builder. There's so much that we can say about Ada Anderson's life and legacy. She was a philanthropist. Her generous gift at Huston-Tillotson University to establish the Sandra Joy Anderson Community Health and Wellness Center is indicative of her giving spirit. She was a supporter of education, a builder of community and civic organizations, supporting young people, building families, and supporting the church. She was an overcomer. She faced and endured racism, gender discrimination, and rejection. The trailblazers are the ones whose knees have the most scars. She got scars to serve her community. She overcame personal difficulties, illnesses, and the deaths of her husband, children, and siblings. And she continued on. She was a builder. She took the foundation life presented and expanded it beyond measure. Her living legacy will continue through Huston-Tillotson University, East Austin, and LEAP, Leadership Enrichment Arts Program, that she spearheaded and served for more than 10 years. We celebrate a woman who lived with purpose and built a structure bigger and broader than many could imagine. We celebrate a woman who lived to support others and open doors for African Americans. We celebrate a woman whose light shines as a model for women everywhere and demonstrates that vision, imagination, laughter, and tenacity can break down barriers and build bridges of hope and achievement. Ada Collins Anderson has gone to the land of rest, where the great paymaster of eternal glory will grant a reward. I leave you with the words of Will Drumgoole, the bridge builder. An old man going a lone highway came at the evening, cold and gray, to a chasm vast and deep and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen stream had no fear for him, but he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you are wasting your strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You never again will pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build this bridge at evening tide? The builder lifted his old gray head. Good friend, in the path I have come, he said, there followed after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that has been as naught to me, to that fair-haired youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I am building this bridge for him.
Good afternoon. My father was one of my big brothers. And I watched her as I grew up. I saw all of her accomplishments, which I'm not going to cover today because they're well documented. They're well stated in the program. So what I want to do is talk to you about where she got this sense of family, this sense of fearlessness that she had her entire life. She was always a good student. She loved learning. That never stopped. So when she started discovering all of the history back to her great-grandfather, Newton Isaac Collins, she couldn't stop researching. She enjoyed finding information about him, learning that he was the son of a beautiful woman enslaved and the slave owner, the plantation owner. But at a very early age, he was taught to read, to write, and then he was given an apprenticeship to be a carpenter, which he became a well-renowned carpenter. Now, he was born in Alabama, but migrated to Texas. I'm going to read Aunt Ada's words about the Collins family and the Rucker family, but my cousin Anthony's going to talk about the Rucker side. I'm going to talk about the Collins side. So in 2003, Aunt Ada was so passionate about not only that she knew her history, but she was very passionate about all of us should know our history and be proud of it. So that was her motivation. That kept her going all her life. You don't stop achieving when you come from a strong family that survived slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow. You don't stop, okay? So in 2003, she had this brilliant idea that instead of just a family reunion, that our family and the Rucker family should have a conference, a weekend of meetings to learn about each other. And then she invited each family head and their family members to write something about their immediate families to share so that it would be documented for those future generations. So she opened up her book. That's why I brought this today. She called this a scrapbook. And in the scrapbook, she opened by saying about the Collins and the Rucker families. The beginnings of these families have been traced to the slave block in New Orleans, freed African Americans from the slaveholding South, and Irish, English, and Dutch slaveholders and non-slaveholders. Their trails have followed through the Civil War and Reconstruction Texas, where in a time of unprecedented violence against African Americans and newly enacted black codes that restricted their freedoms, these families not only survived, but prospered. Former slaves in the Collins and Rucker families bought tracts of land that became family homesteads and farms, built houses, churches, and schools, fought in the Indian Wars, helped build the state capitol, and passed this legacy to their children. The next generation improved upon the land. They had flower gardens. They were successful farmers, They built stables for buggies and cars, raised vegetable and flower gardens. Her mother was awesome. She had such an awesome green thumb. She always had beautiful, beautiful flower gardens. Hung artwork, and she also painted. Hung artwork on their walls, designed and sewed exquisite clothing and furnishings. Her mother, my grandmother, was one of the most outstanding seamstresses I've ever known in my entire life. She was impeccable. Everything was to perfection. And most importantly, they sent their children to college. Generation after generation has held on to this family legacy and improved upon it. The minister spoke about it earlier. Today's Collins and Ruckers are doctors, lawyers, civil rights leaders, professors, teachers, ranchers, landowners, real estate agents, and on and on. Documenting this history of these two families begins with the narratives and that she had each of us to write for our families. At the time this was done, my father had transitioned. And so I wrote a story to honor my father. And my mother was still alive, so I did that. I've been given just a couple of minutes to be up here, so I think I would be remiss if I had this opportunity to speak to you and not do what the young Ada Anderson would have done. If the young Ada Anderson were here today, before you, she would most definitely speak to you about what's going on with our voting rights that are being taken away, being attempted to. She would definitely be encouraging you to speak up, get involved. Don't let this happen. Our forefathers fought for the right to vote. Aunt Ada, my father, and others worked tirelessly to get the poll tax eliminated. So look back to the poll tax days and look where we are now, where it's being made more difficult for us to vote. And make no mistake, it's targeted at us, okay? So the young Ada Anderson that I know and love would tell you to speak up, get involved, vote people out of office who are trying to do all of these horrible, horrible things. And Texas is one of the worst in the nation, but there are others. There are too many others that are doing that. So we need to vote. We need to speak up. We need to make sure that we don't lose the progress that Aunt Ada and those before her worked so tirelessly for. So I'm taking this opportunity to do what I think my Aunt Ada would be proud of. Okay. One few last things to say. Over the last probably 10 years, every time I visited with her, we both discovered we're political news junkies. So we talked politics, we talked world events, we talked about world travels. She loved to travel the world, and so do I. Still want to see more. So we talked about all of those things. And she always wanted me to make sure that I know my ancestors, that I know where I came from, and that I keep pushing forward. So when growing up in Pilot Knob, my father maintained the farm from his great-grandfather and so forth. So that's where I grew up. And our family has owned that land for well over 100, probably 40, 50 years, and operated it as a farm. Land that's adjacent to where I grew up is now a beautiful new subdivision, Carmen Easton. So, when my brother Ernest, who couldn't be here today, because in fact he was really supposed to be the one speaking, but he had to be out of town. But when he found out that new subdivision at the groundbreaking, we were there, and the superintendent of Dale Valley ISD was there. And we found out that they were going to build a brand new state-of-the-art elementary school there. Well, Ernest jumped right on that. He started talking to the superintendent and said, you know, it would really be great if that school were named after the Collins family. We've been here for well over 100 years. We pay taxes, a lot of taxes, because we own a lot of land out here. And we think it's only right that it be named after our family. So he brought me in on the deal, and we lobbied the school district. We went to school board meetings. We wrote letters. We called. And the very last meeting that we attended, we were told that they have a citizen review board that recommends names for schools. And that unfortunately, they had recommended that it be named after the park, state park down the road. McKinney Falls Elementary is going to be the name. But because Ernest and I had told our family's history to the school board, one of the school board members took a particular interest in knowing that, because no one on the school board knew about the Collins family. Imagine that. They knew nothing about us at all. And there was never a school named after an African American in Del Valley ISD. So we didn't give up. We showed up. We drove to town every time there was a board meeting, and we put ourselves on the speaker's list, and we talked. So one of the last things that we said to them was, we understand you have traditions, we understand you have a recommendation, but you would be remiss if you ignore the history of this area and the family that built this area and still owns this area. We hung around that night when the school board went into recess to discuss things. My brother says, Ernest says, do you think we ought to leave? And I said, no, we won't leave. We'll stay right here and see what they have to say. When they came back, much to our amazement, it was announced that for the first time ever, Del Valley ISD overruled what their civilian board said, recommended, and they were going to name the school Newton Isaac Collins Elementary School. So Aunt Ada was aware, because I had been keeping her apprised of what we were doing. She was so proud. So when we had the groundbreaking for the school, she was frail, but she was going to be there. She had someone take her shopping, bought a new outfit. She kept me up most of the night trying on outfits and seeing what she was going to wear and talking about how wonderful it was what Ernest and I were doing. So she was at the groundbreaking. We have photos in here of that in your program today. From that time on, it took about 2 or 3 years to finish the school. And every time I visited her, she would say, what you and your brother are doing is just wonderful. I'm so proud. I'm so proud. So this was something that meant a lot to her, meant a lot to me, to my entire family, because we know our history. We know from whence we came. We know the struggles of our ancestors. And they didn't give up. Why would we? So it's a state-of-the-art elementary school. If you haven't had a chance to go and visit, I hope you do. And the other thing that my brother did was to lobby the developer to name streets after family members. So the streets around the school are named after family members. And at 2 places, my father's name and my mother's name, Ella Lee Lane and Talford, I think it's Trail, thank you. They actually crisscross. So my mother's name is right above my father's name. And there are other family members whose names are on the street signs in that subdivision. So we take a lot of pride in our heritage. This was what motivated Aunt Ada, was knowing her history. And she was not going to let the legacy of her ancestors down. And she didn't. So in honor of my awesome Aunt Ada, I had to say these things to you today. Please get out and vote. Our lives depend on it. Our democracy of this entire United States depends on your vote. And everyone you know, we have got to get some of these politicians out of office because they are damaging our entire democracy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tony Chase. As my wonderful cousin, who's not a Trump supporter, mentioned, I'm here to offer remembrance as well. And, you know, I'm honored to do this. Aunt Ada was something. She was really something. In fact, I think I should start by saying it was really a privilege to be a child in this family. Large, ambitious, smart, close. It was our family. And Aunt Ada was always right there in the center. I speak specifically on behalf of the Rutgers side, and even more specifically on behalf of my Aunt Johnny B. and my wife Dina, my sister Sandria, and my recently departed mother Drusy, a Huston-Tillotson alumna as well. Maya Angelou said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Ada always made people feel special. She made me feel special. Our families were close. Aunt Ada and Uncle Andy lived in Austin while we resided in Houston. My dad and Uncle Andy were business and political movers and shakers who met often with presidents and governors, collectively steering our society and their families to a better place. Sandra and Jack, Ada and Andy's kids, were a couple of years older than me, and took special notice and care of me. They were in college in Boston when I joined them in the mid-70s. Each took special care to ensure that I was making the right life decisions, even though I often didn't. Actually, my most lucid memory of Aunt Ada was when I was about 8 years old, seated probably 1,000 yards from where we're standing right now, at my grandmother's formal dining room table for Thanksgiving dinner. At some point during the very noisy atmosphere filled with lots of laughter and great food, Aunt Ada looked at me and asked why I was smiling. I told her that I was just happy, though actually, the actual truth was that I was looking at Uncle Andy and I couldn't stop smiling as I remembered my grandmother saying the night before that the reason Uncle Andy was so smart was because his head was so big and he could hold his big brain. We miss Aunt Ada already. They don't make them like her anymore. Her legacy lives on in each of us. We will miss her always. Thank you.
We will now have a musical selection. If I could ask the presenters after the musical selection to please come to the back of the stage so we can move the program forward. And Mary Anna, I can hand you the mic if you don't want to navigate those stairs. Just let me know. Okay. All right. So now we have a musical selection by Christine Fanuel, class of '98, and of the Leadership Enrichment Arts Program, accompanied by Dr. Huston-Tillotson Professor Emerita Beulah Agnes Curry-Jones.
Your sense of wonder. You get your fill to eat and never lose your hunger. choice, figure out a dance. I hope you dance. I hope you dance. I hope you dance. I hope you dance.
Hello, good afternoon. Madam President, members of the family, and all the friends of Mrs. Ada Anderson, I am so amazingly pleased to be asked to say a few words at her memorial. And Mr. Chase, I'll tell you, she even makes me feel special now, the fact that I get to do this. The truth is, I feel like Ada Anderson is a part of who I am today because of her embrace of me as a relatively young man and when I was Austin mayor. She taught me, supported me, and she was a friend to me in ways that made me want to be what she would want me to be. She expected a person who she adopted to learn, to continually earn her support, and to do right. And of course, we all have memories of Ada, lots of them. For me, they span from including things like her masterfully co-chairing a task force that I created to help pick a superintendent. I remember her work on various boards and, of course, her donations and desire and philanthropy to bring about better health care. As I say, lots of memories. I even have a great memory of frantically scrambling because of an unexpected and urgent request to get her an amp and a microphone almost immediately for an event that was very, very important to her. And by the way, I can remember saying, Ms. Anderson, I don't have an amp or a microphone. And her saying, but you know how to find one. I learned very early. When she said jump, I said how high? And I'll never forget that magnificent, radiant smile and laugh. But in the brief time I have, I want to focus on how strongly I'm reminded of conversations with her about social justice and race. Conversations that we had about how she saw race, how she saw beauty and potential in people, even those who needed to do better, and how she hoped everyone would use their positions to have us all do better in dealing with race and racial injustice. My vivid memories are being with her in the mayor's office, just the two of us. That recollection and reflection right now feels especially meaningful with all that's happening in our country and our city. Ms. Anderson was very graceful in helping people explore and live what ought to be core values. She encouraged thinking and doing right. I admired how Ada didn't give up on folks because she knew people can change. They experience and learn. So she taught. I loved the times I was able to talk to her, listen to her read. Those opportunities reinforced all of our common humanity. It renewed my spirit, and it reminded me that many of us, especially people who look like I do, have personal histories that speak to the crucial role of always, always, always evaluating whether we're doing enough when it comes to race, social justice, and inclusion. People who look like I do lack experience and understanding. Our education was and is flawed. We've grown up in a toxic ecosystem of weakness, fear, privilege, and far too little empathy on issues of race and racism. For me, Ada helped solidify a belief and an instinct that in recognizing that history, admitting that history, there is a path so that we can each do better and be better. We can acknowledge and admit wrongs, concede failure, hear people more clearly, learn more intently, and seek forgiveness. And of course, as has already been pointed out, Ada would remind us that we are obligated to act. I thank God for the opportunity I had to know Ada Anderson, a tremendous person who helped move this country closer to what it should be, and a tremendous person who moved me to being closer to the person I want to be. Thank you.
I'm honored to be asked to be here, Mayor of Boston, because it's important that on behalf of a grateful city, forever fortunate and blessed for her presence among us in our community, to be able to be here today to honor and say thank you to Mrs. Anderson. You know, all cities have their giants, their city communities, and it's so very sad when they leave us. You know, what are we going to do? How do we lose a compass that for so long has pointed us all in the right direction? Some people always seem to be there in the right place at the right time. For Mrs. Anderson, it may be more that the right place and the right time arose because she just happened to be there. In the few moments allotted to me to talk, there's scarce time to go through all the awards and the recognition, all the achievements, the honors, the firsts, including being the first African American Austinite to win a countywide election. But let me touch on one incident. It was the Ice Palace skating case in 1962. She was outraged, as she should have been. She was outraged at the race restrictions at the local ice skating rink that would not let her children participate. Ms. Anderson organized a boycott. That boycott was able to achieve wide media coverage at a time when a city and a state and a country were undergoing significant change. Some of the people in this room probably remember that at one point someone shot at the protesters when they passing the car. The skating rink went bankrupt. The boycott was successful, and the city continued to change little by little. Now that effort alone was a moment of greatness. But great people don't stop with moments. Mrs. Anderson used what she had learned from this experience to form a coalition of pastors, university professors, and others. It became the genesis of what in Austin is the Austin Human Relations Commission in our city. During the 1960s, it was this commission that worked to change city regulations, to open up Austin hotels and schools and businesses to all people. And its work continued through the decades. Thousands of people used this body to open doors and to be able to access justice. I mention that because in 1983, as a brand new baby lawyer, just licensed, I began my law career representing workers and people of color in front of that commission, as it had become the local agency for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission here in Central Texas. And in doing that work, I was often reminded that that work was her work. And I needed to remember that as I did her work. You know, if you look around the city that we have today, you will see the work of Mrs. Anderson everywhere. In the conversations that we are having in this current day on race and equity, on fairness and atonement in this city, right now, we see the work of Mrs. Anderson. On behalf of a grateful city, fortunate forever, and blessed by her presence in our community, I'm here to say thank you, Mrs. Anderson.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucy Baines Johnson. I am the youngest daughter of Lady Bird and Lyndon Johnson. But the only relationship that really matters today is I was Ada Anderson's friend and follower in her pursuit of social justice. Dr. Burnett, Reverend Freeman, members of Ada's family by birth and by choice, it is an honor to celebrate with you Ada Anderson's life so very well lived. It is so right to be here at Huston-Tillotson, the university that Ada never forgot, which never forgot her. Ada was wonder to behold. She was gracious, classy, impeccably groomed, articulate, positive, smart, and generous. She was the gold standard for the best that we can all be. As I told members of Ada's family when she died, my family often used the word Ada as a verb. When Ada asked you to do something you knew you'd been Ada, it was just easier to do what she asked than it was to figure out an acceptable excuse. I hear many of you laughing. I suspect you've been Ada too. But we were all better, so much better, because of the influence and the inspiration that she had on each of us. Besides, Ada's requests were never for her. They were always for causes that served others. especially those in need. I knew and loved Ada for 50 years, for as the song goes, to know her was to love her. Like my husband and so many good things in my life, Ada came to me through my mother. I do not actually remember meeting Ada. She was just always there in Austin, serving social justice for all of us, inspiring all of us to care about each other and to become the best that we can be. She was there serving her community through Huston-Tillotson, the University of Texas, the LBJ Library, the Girl Scouts, my mother's project to beautify Town Lake, the Austin Lyric Opera Laguna Gloria, and of course, her beloved LEAP, Leadership Enrichment in the Arts program. Ada was everywhere, serving everybody. And I can't tell you what it meant to me to hear her family stand up today in recognizing her and reminding all of us that she will be reminding us from heaven that the job is not yet done. There is so much we need to do for liberty, a promise of liberty and justice for all to be the reality all of us deserve. So Ada, I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep determined to be the person you wanted me to be. We worked together on many of these causes. She was my mentor and my friend. She taught me tenacity and grace under fire. She taught me how to be a strong woman, but not an abrasive one. It was so appropriate that Ada concluded an illustrious career in educationally related service as the first African-American woman on the board of Austin's Community College. It is equally right to be here at HT today, for Huston-Tillotson gave Ada her first chance at a college education, and Ada Anderson was always first and forever a teacher. What we all want to do in life is to make a difference. Make a difference, Ada did. She changed the aspirations of so many young people, exposing them to great museums, cultural experiences, and schools. She personified the song from South Pacific. You've got to have a dream. Because if you don't have a dream, how are you going to make a dream come true? Ada had dreams, dozens of them, and always for others. She was a can-do woman in every sense of the word. My father worked feverishly to open the doors of opportunity to Americans of color, and Ada Anderson walked through those doors as a velvet hammer. A velvet hammer that built success for others and made their dreams come true. A velvet hammer that never gave up on reminding us how much work there was to be done. One of Ada's dreams was to partner with the LBJ Library to exhibit African-American art. Practically single-handedly, she brought the library 2 blockbuster exhibits that the community is still raving about. Ada took immense pride in graduating from Huston-Tillotson and being the first African-American woman to complete her coursework for a master's degree in library science. Oh, what an achievement that was. But I would dare to say that right up there was bringing the exhibit on Harlem Renaissance and the other on contemporary African-American artists to the LBJ Library. As hundreds of black people of all ages poured through the library's door to see these exhibits, I saw Ada's and my father's dreams coming true. Community service was Ada's mother's milk. She thrived on helping others, especially children. She felt that the children who lived on the margins ought to also benefit from exposure to museums, the arts, and great educational experiences. Alas, when Ada was back in school at the University of Texas pursuing that master's degree in library science, segregation denied Ada access to the essential field placement at the Texas State Library. That prevented her from being awarded her Library of Science degree. But segregation never defeated Ada. She returned years later to the University of Texas to earn a master's in educational psychology, a degree she put to work in a life of community service. My husband and I just returned from London, England, and my first trip to the renowned summer exhibition at the Royal Academy of Arts. Everywhere I turned in the exhibit, I was reminded of Ada Anderson. Amongst the hundreds of artists exhibited, I saw many by black artists. A painting of a refined black woman sitting stately on a wall, observing the world around her. That was Ada. I saw a piece of poster art that said, "Teaching is beautiful. I want to go to art school." But the whole world is an art school. You are an artist. That too was Ada. Finally, my favorite was a large table filled with dozens of matchbox cars. The cars were military, industrial, and personal. Thrown in this mix was a tiny toy hippo with its mouth wide open, a monkey driving a truck, a camel, and an elephant. Toy black dogs towered over these figures, cheek to cheek, providing one new discovery after another. One discovery after another. That really was Ada Anderson. The exhibit, like Ada, kept you constantly stimulated with what to see, what to learn, what to do next. Ada was so much like my mother. Feeling a day without learning was a day that was wasted. And she wasn't going to let you or I waste it. Like mother, Ada was my lifelong teacher and example. They shared a love of life, a passion for learning and service, and a devotion to me that made me feel far more important than I was, but not more than made my hearts. I have no doubt Ada's in heaven now, surrounded by the husband and daughter she loved, son. She's cooking up with Mama yet another group of noble causes. I can also hear Daddy saying, "Ada, what on earth took you so long to get to heaven? We needed you, Ada." Well, we've all needed Ada, and our loss is surely heaven's gain. But our opportunity to serve others is still in front of us. So, Ada, I'm going to keep on keeping on for the social justice that meant so much to you, for the social justice that will make our country what it can be, for the social justice that you were all about. And I think the greatest tribute that we can all have is to keep on keeping on for others. That is indeed what Ada did for nearly a century.
I know you're happy to know that I'm the last speaker. And have you all noticed, by the way, when you saw her degree and you see her date of her birth, she was 19 years old when she got her first degree from this university. That's just sort of amazing. My name is Claude Duclos, and I've been involved in a lot of community activities. I was the president of the bar, and of course my parents, Walter and Gina Duclos, started the Austin Lyric Opera. And in 1986, they could find no better board of trustee member than Ada Anderson. Now, I had met Ada through a number of bar programs where she was serving on education committees. And of course, everyone has used every adjective I had planned to use to tell you about Ada. She was absolutely beautiful. She was a great fun. But I will tell you the last thing, and I will probably give this back to you, the audience, and move on. One thing people haven't said is she was a great listener. She knew what my wife, Susan back there, the psychotherapist, has told me for 20 years, that healing begins when people think they're being listened to. So you have to listen to people, not just a little bit of their story. You can't give advice until you're asked and you know the whole story. I use that when I train lawyers across the country on the art of the interview. You must listen to people, and she knew that instinctively. Of course, she was wonderful. One of her relatives called her a diva. Well, I can tell you, if you met my mother, Gina Duclos, you'd know that I have a PhD in diva. But when the two of them occupied a table together, it almost blinded me, because they were so wonderful, and they were just so out there. They were the queens of any meeting that they walked into. But she knew how to listen to them. And when she listened to you, something she taught, people felt respected. And when she spoke, she earned the respect, because first she had respected what the other person was saying. She brought grace to our lives in whatever she did. What we learned from the way she handled herself in public is that to be heard, I must first listen. To be loved, I must first love. And if I'm going to be respected, I have to show others respect. So Ada will be missed by all of you. She will always be loved. She will always be cherished. And she will always be respected. Thank you.
For this morning's risings, new mercies given. For every door now open, every pathway clear, we give thanks. God saw all that he had made, all, and said it was very beautiful. May the works Ada's done speak for her. May the work she's done speak for her. She has done the best she could, though some misunderstood. May the work she's done for know the work she's done, does it speak for her? May the service she gave speak for her. May the service she gave speak for her. Now she's resting in her grave, and there's nothing more that she can say. May the service she gave speak for her. May the life she lives speak for her. May the life she lives speak for her. When she stands before her God, hear him say the job well done. In the life she's lived, yes, it will speak for her. The life she lived and the service she gave, the life she touched and the work she did. Yes, she'll stand before our Lord, smile when he says, well done, the work she's done. Yes, they speak. And may our lives speak well for us.
Following the speaker, we will have a short video presentation before we do the closing remarks and the benediction.
I contacted Sister Anderson, goes back to my husband. He was a frat brother of mine, Andy. When I first met her, I was impressed because of her beauty. Later, when the program was created that she was in charge of called LEAP, L-E-A-P is the only program. Christina sang a few minutes ago. She was a product of that program. My wife and I, we have 4 children, and we had 2 who were eligible to be a part of LEAP. What Ada was able to do for us could not have been done by anybody else or any other way. Our children were exposed to things that they would never have been exposed to no matter how much money I had, what contacts I had, because I didn't have that level of contact. Ada was a person who went to the top, and she was a portal, I guess you call conductor. She made sure that a lot of other people got a chance to experience things at the top. I can speak of, this book that I have, I didn't bring it to present, other than the fact that for some reason I recorded everything that we did from 2003 all the way up until the last event that we had. And there were 2 things that really shaped me into understanding what kind of person this was. I worked at ACC. She was on the board. I was there. I've been at ACC ever since it's been open. So when she campaigned to be a part of the board of ACC, she came to the campus and I got a chance to do other than better. But when we went on these field trips, they needed chaperones. And my job allowed me to be one. Black male, being able to travel. And some of these places I would have never had the opportunity to go. I remember we went to Atlanta one summer. We took these children, she took these children. And she wanted some chaperones. And so I went along. I got more out of it than the children did. we stayed on Emory campus. Now, I heard of Emory. Most of us know that in Atlanta, what kind of city that is, but we don't. It's an academic center. It's a very strong institution. I was amazed that we stayed there a week. We stayed on the campus. I was amazed at what we were allowed to do. And it was all because of faith. That's when I began. We went to one house in the neighborhood, and they had a guest book. And Jimmy Carter's name was in that guest book. And I put mine in there too. But I thought about it, but how, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do this. But it didn't register with me too much in the fact that this was a new adventure for me. We came back to Austin, and whenever they had an opera, our children got a chance to go. I could have gone to anything in Austin I wanted to go to. Finance wouldn't have been a problem. But opera, that wasn't a part of what I wanted to do. But my children were exposed to going to an event like this, and so I went too. I was introduced to something that I had read about, heard about, knew what it was, but I didn't have the experience of. And Ada would make it possible for these children to, and us, I'm not saying children, I'm saying us, to visit the principals. When they practiced for their plays and what they were going to do, they would practice around town. Ada would establish an opportunity for us to go to one of the rehearsals that wouldn't even be advanced concert hall. And I thought about this is something amazing. And then one year, one summer, we went to Washington, D.C. They had just opened up the Holocaust Museum. And we thought it would be nice if our students, we had a bus full of students, but when we tried to make the application, they told us, you had to, this place was booked up for the next 8 months. You could not go. And we had just made up, we had more than we wanted to go. About 2 hours later, we got a phone call at the hotel. The bus was about to pick us up to take us to the Holocaust Museum. We never knew why or how until later. And what I found out is that somebody's already said this, so I don't have to be done. This woman is phenomenal. This is what I think we need to strive for. But people, they don't make many like Ada. Now we can sit here and say we wish somebody to take the baton, but there are not many people left. Because when her niece or whoever it was talked about her childhood, I understood why Ada was dedicated and committed to what she was about. This is something that she was blessed with, or you may say, given as a curse. But Ada was dynamic. If she told you, and I didn't care what level you were, if she told you she was going to do something for you, God knows she did it. I'll make one more, I shouldn't even say this. That'll make this nice. They tried to remove me from Austin Community College. I've been there, as I said, I've been there 49 years. And somewhere along the way, somebody decided that I wasn't working out too well, and I had to go down to the president's office, and they told me that if I resigned, it's on Thursdays, if you resign tomorrow, which is Friday, present to the board Monday, and it won't be on your record that you got fired, because when you're in administration, you fired. I came back to the office, I went over to my wife, I said, well, they got me. And she said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going out to the school, I don't know. Ada was on the board. I went to school and I thought, what should I do? And I called Ada, and she said, come down here. I came down to the office, and she said, what happened? On what basis are they doing this? I said, I don't know. She said, okay. And she told me what to do. Went back to the office. And she told me to send somebody down there. One of the principals in this involved that I was in that was dealing with that issue. I don't know what they did. I don't know what they talked about. I got a phone call Sunday night before Monday. They told me to come by the office president's office, dean's office at our campus. And I was told, we're not gonna fire you right now, we're gonna put you on probation. I never knew what happened until later. And all the stuff that Ada has done for people in this community, when you added up and you knew who she was, and I heard you say this today, I didn't know as well as what I read today. This woman could do phenomenal things. My prayer is that, I'm not saying this for anybody that want to be inspired to try to do what they, because I think this is something that comes from a higher power. But I think the people in this community ought to know who Ada Anderson is. And this is not enough people here today to know this. This lady should be taught in the history of the area, of especially Austin. And I'm a teacher. I'm going to do this in my classes. I don't know where most of you, but you do. But just the way to perpetuate something is you let young people know that there are people who have done things that they too can do. And you do that by talking about this person's contributions. You can name buildings after them, you can have holidays for them, but until you teach young people and let them discover, you can't do this in a day. You can't do it in a week. This is why we teach American history 4 times in the public school system. We teach it 4 times. We take American history. Why? Because they want you to know something about this country. This person needs to be perpetuated. What she has done needs to be perpetuated. So my challenge to us is not just to leave here feeling good about what we get today. We need to make sure that this person, Ada Anderson, Ada Collins Anderson, is included in the history of this district. Just like their school's going to be out there in Dale Day. I know I talked too long, but when I sit there and listen to what I heard today, I changed what I was going to say 5 times. Because I heard stuff that I don't need to repeat. I know I'm talking too long, but that's because I waited so long. But Ada is a tremendous person and should be honored. Thank you.
Change maker, entrepreneur, and philanthropist in Austin for 70 years. Born on the Collins family farm near what is now McKinney Falls State Park, Anderson was an inspired and curious student, graduating from high school at the age of 15. She enrolled in 1941 at the only college she could attend in Austin, Tillotson College. After graduation, she married Marcellus J. Anderson, and they had 2 children. In 1951, Ada Anderson sought to continue her education, her heart set on becoming a counselor, but only a few degree programs were open to her. So after 2 years of petitioning, she settled on studying library science. She later earned her master's degree in psychology from UT. In 1953, Anderson helped found the Austin chapter of Jack and Jill, a national organization for African American families. It was while planning activities for her children that Ada Anderson began her public career as a leader, advisor, and philanthropist. In 1962, a new ice skating rink was set to open. At that time, Austin was legally segregated. On opening day at the Ice Palace, Anderson and the other Jack and Jill mothers and children began a 7-day-a-week protest at the ice rink with the motto, "Integration is good for business." Ada drew powerful support and allies from across white Austin. It took nearly a year of picketing, but the mothers prevailed. She then helped to launch the city's Human Relations Commission, which worked to pass a local ordinance banning racial discrimination. Now recognized as a leader, Anderson was asked by Texas Governor Preston Smith to serve on his Commission of the Status of Women and Committee on Human Relations. During the next 2 decades, Anderson served on the boards of the Austin Mental Health Association, St. David's Foundation, the Lone Star Girl Scout Council, the University of Texas College of Education Advisory Council, Ballet Austin, and Austin Community College. She was usually the only black at the table and always the only black woman. In 1986, Anderson was named to the Texas Black Women's Hall of Fame. In 1989, she saw an opportunity to widen opera audiences while also connecting African American youth with opera. The Leadership Enriching Arts program brought East Austin students to the opera where they met with performers and learned to create and produce their own operas. Anderson was a visionary in that she knew as Austin grew, the arts would be a magnet for diverse people to gather, connect, and build a vital and inclusive community. In 1998, she co-led the planning for the revitalization of the old Palmer Auditorium to create a new art venue and cultural center to serve the needs of many arts groups. For 70 years, Ada Collins Anderson had organized, led, fundraised, and donated her way to helping make Austin the great place we love. But she wasn't done yet. In 2014, Anderson donated $3 million to Huston-Tillotson University, the largest gift ever made to the institution. 2 years later, the Sandra Joy Anderson Community Health and Wellness Center opened on East 11th Street. The center is named after Anderson's late daughter and offers integrated medical and behavioral health care to students and the whole community. Anderson's philosophy of philanthropy is simple. You are a happier person when you give something back to your community. She has also been known to say with that twinkle in her eye, if you live long enough, you get talked into a lot of things. The Association of Fundraising Professionals Greater Austin celebrates with gratitude Ms. Ada Collins Anderson as Outstanding Philanthropist of the Year for 70 years of giving.
I think we could do a little better than that. I really appreciated each of the speakers, particularly Ms. Johnson's being aided and being aiding because it's truly a verb. And the aiding is still going on. I would like to emphasize that even recently I was able to sign off on a letter from the Austin Public Library's director, Roosevelt Weeks, to encourage the University of Texas to honor posthumously and confer the degree of Masters of Library Science for Mrs. Anderson. And that letter encouraging the University of Texas to award that degree posthumously clearly states that because she was denied that master's because of the color of her skin, and she could not do her field work. So that letter clearly states that her life work is her field work, and her life legacy. So we've honored, celebrated the life and legacy. It should live on in your hearts and in your actions for forever, not just today. I will close this program with her words of wisdom printed in the program. You can find mediocrity any place and any time, but not on my time. Focus on activities that interest you and draw on your strengths. That way, you will be working or volunteering happily. And I learned early on what can happen when determination coexists with opportunity. Don't give up. Thank you, Dr. Mrs. Ada Anderson, for touching our lives for forever and ever and encouraging us to use our superpower of persistence to fight for what's right, for forever and ever, and to fight for what's just, for justice for all. So I'm going to ask Reverend Donald Brewington, University's chaplain, to please close us with a benediction. And I encourage all of you to please partake of the reception outside immediately following the program. I'm going to ask you please to all stand.
appreciate the blessing forth as we move towards the benediction. As you go forth from this place this day, go forth in the spirit of a living and a loving God. Go forth. Go forth forever celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. Mrs. Ada Cecilia Collins Anderson. Go forth in the spirit of Dr. Ada Anderson and build on the foundation that God has given you. And like her, build well, impacting not just a community, but a world. Go forth recognizing, like Mrs. Anderson, the power within, enabling you to transform life all around you, being wise in your building. Go forth. Go forth standing for justice, be it political, be it social, be it racial, be it religious, and stand firm with an open mind and compassionate heart, laboring to make a difference in this world. Go forth. Go forth, allowing the life you live to speak for you. And now, may God's Son, S-U-N, energize you. May his breezes cool and comfort you. May his mercy sustain you. May his grace guide you and his love surround, motivate, and move you as you engage life in your living. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you all for coming.